Hello, I'm checked out 2:05. Yep, thank you for that extra hour. I needed it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our weekly meeting. We're going to discuss the week ahead, and it's actually a pretty dense week. We have the new moon in Pisces, which is great news. That's happening on March 18. Then after that, on March 20th, we have the equinox. And then on March 21, 22, depends where you are in the world, we're going to have Mercury finally going direct. And he's going to still be trotting, or let's say limping through Pisces all the way up until the middle of April. So with the shadow, the post retrograde shadow that you have to be always a little bit more careful with, and with the fact that Mercury is retrograding or going straight after, sorry, direct in Pisces, which is a sign of fall. It just means that until the middle of April, it's a little bit funky. But remember, we talked about 3 days ago when Jupiter started going direct in his sign of exaltation, which is Cancer, a fellow water sign. It creates actually a much better flow with everything. You might have felt like some kind of a release happening 2 days ago. And again, we're going to have a better flow after Mercury goes direct on March 21, 22, and then we're going to have much more easygoing energies, at least with communication after the middle of April. A few things, that's when basically Mercury is going to go into Aries. So a few things happening this week, like we said. Today we have, actually on March 18, we have Venus squaring Jupiter. That's not always the easiest energy. That's going to happen, I guess, in Tuesday. It talks about excessive energy. So whenever Venus and Jupiter interact, it's interesting because both of them are considered to be a planet that expands or creates positive energy. So I think about it as our two good characters. So even if they're going through a square, which is a fight, because they're the good guys, even if they're going through a fight, it's not that bad. I mean, it's much worse if Mars and Saturn or Uranus and Pluto are going through some problems. So what we have with that, Jupiter, Venus, just be careful not to spend too much. Just be careful not to be overdoing, because Jupiter negative aspect is over optimism, spreading yourself too thin, doing too many things. Venus dark side could be vanity. It could be pampering yourself, or just indulging yourself, or medicating yourself with something, whether it's a certain relationship or sweets or carbs or shopping therapy. So just on Tuesday, be aware that Jupiter and Venus are squaring. But on March 18, 19, depends where you are in the world, we have the new moon in Pisces, a great time to start something new. But because we're in Mercury retrograde, only something that you've started in the past. You can continue doing it, or if something failed to be accomplished in the past, you can return to it. Anything to do with spirituality, mysticism, meditation, yoga. If you need to go back to Pilates, go back to dancing, go back to a certain physical activity, especially with movement, that would be great. Going back to any kind of work that you've done on poetry or dreams or imagination, or any project that's creative, that's really good. Then we have on March 20th to April 19, the sun moving into Aries. That basically means that March 20th is our new year. So on Wednesday, we have, Wednesday is it? Thursday. We have the astrological new year, the most sacred day of the year. So a lot of the religion holidays, a lot of the ceremonies that we have in our traditions are based on astrology. And the most important one of them is definitely the astrological new year. That is also the Kurdish new year. It's also the Persian new year. These are echoes from the past. In Sumeria and Babylon, that developed astrology, had that day, March 20th, the equinox, the day when the night and the day are equal, as the beginning of the year. And it totally makes sense to start the year on the first day of Aries, when we spring into action. So The next 30 days, from March 20th until April 20th, we have a time of initiation. Every sign has it in a different place in their chart. I posted something about that in Instagram, so you can check to see where your sign actually has to work with this equinox. I also sent an email about it, so it's on my website under Learn. You can see all the blogs there. But the idea is that every sign needs to initiate something on the astrological New Year's in order to benefit from the year. Now, every year it will be the same, because every year the equinox starts on 0 degrees Aries, and that 0 degree Aries for every sign is located someplace different. But what I've noticed that there's a lot of logic to it. So for example, Aries, being the sign of initiation, has to start everything new in the equinox, and that kind of makes sense because it begins their birthday year. For Taurus though, which is a very materialistic sign, it's the sign that has to do with the five senses, it's interesting that every year the initiation has to do with something to let go. It's almost as if, okay, you want to get some new stuff, new goods, great. Get rid, donate, cut away from things that you had from the past. And it's kind of a time for Tauruses to actually go deeper inside and to look more into their soul instead of the body. Gemini, it's interesting because the equinox always falls on their house of communities, people, technology, innovation. And we expect Gemini, the messenger, to connect us to people, to be connected to people, and definitely to download any kind of new technologies. Cancer, funny enough, every equinox is asked to do something that is opposite to their nature, and that is to go to focus on career instead of home and family. And maybe that's kind of a shake-up for the Cancers to remember, okay, we know that you're very emotional, very feeling, very home-oriented, but listen, we want you to focus on your career, to push something in your career. For Leo, which is the king, it's interesting because the equinox will always fall on the house of mass media, mass communication, presenting myself, but at the same time, it's the house of truth and philosophy and everything that has to do with being authentic. So the king and the queen, once a year is asked to go into the temple, confess, and be basically much more aligned with what is the general truth instead of their own truth. For Virgos, funny enough, even though Virgo is the sign of chastity and piety, their new year, astrological new year, always falls in the house of sexuality, intimacy, transformation, magic. So their job is to serve us through research, through depth, through passion. And their job is to keep the passion aflame. And it's interesting because they're the sign of virginity, and they're suddenly told every year, the astrological new year, to start something new with passion and sexuality. But that kind of makes sense because in Kabbalah, the letter Yod is associated with Virgo. Yod is the sperm of God. It was given to Virgo to hold it. It's almost like in Tantra, we have the real Tantra is practiced between nuns and monks that are not supposed to have sex. Then Libra has to focus on what it's always focused on, relationship, partnership. So every equinox, Libras are asked to look into their design, into their, basically, their relationship, their partnerships, how they deal with collaboration, mediation, and everything to do with art, design, colors, beauty, everything that has to do with balance and justice. For Scorpio, every year on the equinox, they're supposed to start focusing on their diet, their health, their work, everything that has to do with service, even pets. For Sagittarius, it's more about love, happiness, and creativity. And that's something that Sages really vibe with. So it basically talks about how, yes, we know that you're the sign of traveling, but on the equinox, go back home, check on your kids, on your creative project, on your happiness, on your love. And that means basically that the sign of mass media, which is Sagittarius, is supposed to promote the message of love, happiness, and creativity. For Capricorn, even though it's the sign of career, it's asked every year to look into home and family, almost like to check in on the home and family. The same way that the opposite sign, Cancer, had to look into their career, Capricorn, that usually rules career, has to look into the house of home and family, real estate. And for Aquarius, it's all about finding the message, which is kind of interesting. Gemini, the sign of messages, is in the house that is ruled by Aquarius, community. And the sign of community, Aquarius, is in the house of communication that is usually by Gemini. So it means that everything that has to do with technology, innovation, which is what Aquarius is all about. Communities, people have to find their message. For Pisces, it's all about money, talents, and self-worth. Again, we have this duality. Taurus, which is a very materialistic sign, is asked to be mystical on the new year. And Pisces, the most mystical sign, is supposed to be more materialistic on the new year. So you see, there's some logic about how this equinox, it's kind of a jolt of an energy, pushes the sign to find their own path. Then on March 21st, we have the Mercury stationary. So it's the time where you're getting pure information, but you can't do anything with it. It's a great time for meditation, so that in March 22, you can start signing documents and Mercury goes direct. March 22, I think, is going to be March 22, yeah, next Sunday. So by next Sunday, everything is good to start looking into signatures and beginning projects. If we look at a day-to-day flow this next week to see if there is anything that sticks out, obviously there are quite a lot. So first of all, on Monday, March 16, we have the moon in Aquarius before it moves into Pisces in order to join the sun on March 18 for the new moon. So Monday, tomorrow, it's interesting because we have the moon in Aquarius, but it's a little bit void of course. No, actually it won't be a void of course because of late Uranus, but still, maybe it's not the most clear day overall. The moon in Aquarius does talk about innovation, communities, people, groups, if you need any help there. And also the moon is sending a beautiful sextile to Chiron, some kind of healing around the energies of home and family. But the interesting thing is happening more on the 17, 18, and even the 19. Because remember, we talked always about the moon lighting up or project or sending a projection or sending much more of a focus on whatever aspects are happening anyway. And because we are in now the land of Aries and Pisces, because we're on the border between Pisces and Aries, if you look at the chart, you'll see that from Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, those 3 days, we're going to have the moon in Pisces, Vesta in Pisces, the North Node in Pisces, Mercury in Pisces, Mars in Pisces, Minerva in Pisces, and the Sun in Pisces. So it's a very strong cluster of energy of Pisces. And then, of course, Neptune, Saturn, Venus, and Chiron are in Aries. So if you think about it, we have basically 70% of the chart in two signs, Pisces and Aries, the last sign and the first sign, the feminine and the masculine, the reception and action. So you might be feeling like pushed and pulled between those two forces. But again, a lot of emphasis on Pisces. Pisces keyword is I imagine, Aries is I am. So I am imagination, or I focus on imagination, or imagination can help me find my identity, or my identity can be imagined. You basically put those two archetypes together in the first 3 days of the week. But this whole week is all about that transition, ending one year that started last March and beginning a new one. And the moon sitting on top of the North Node, that happens every year, every month for a day. It does talk about being told or being pushed towards what you're supposed to work on, because what we have now is an interesting time that the moon is conjunct the North Node as well as Mars, as well as Saturn, as well as Mercury. So we have messages, we have emotions, and we have actions that are all geared towards our soul desire. So we can say that Tuesday and Wednesday, especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, are spiritual times, are times where our soul is supposed to be the one that guides our chariot instead of our body or our will or our thoughts. So there's something about kind of surrendering on Monday, Tuesday, especially Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, especially because Pisces is the sign of surrender. So it's asking you to release, to let go, and to be ready for the new year. And remember, we talked about it. This new year, astrological new year, is especially important because we have Neptune on the first degree, second degree of Aries, and Saturn on the fourth degree of Aries. They're very close to the equinox moment, that 0 degree that helps navigators in the sea and us here on Earth. So again, Tuesday, we have the moon in Pisces, as long as Wednesday and Thursday, it's closing of things, is getting the end of things. Not only Pisces, the last sign, the sign that concludes, but also the moon is concluding her cycle in the next 2-3 days before she begins a new one on the 18th or even 19th. So on March 18, which is a Wednesday, we have the new moon in Pisces. And the new moon in Pisces, let me see what is the Sabian symbol for the moon, because we're going to have to see if it's going to be on the 20. Yeah, it's going to be on the 28th degree of Pisces. And the 28 degrees of Pisces is a prism. That's really nice. It's a rainbow, basically, a scientific rainbow. So that 28 degrees of Pisces is a prism, and that basically means that we're going to have to be, or we're going to have the ability to look at the one light, the white light, and how it transforms into different colors. Maybe the combination of fire and water, which is basically what creates the prism. We're talking about the new moon being around 1 a.m., 1:30 a.m. London time on the 19th. So it depends where you are in the world. It's going to be either on the 18th or the 19th, but it's very much happening around, let's say, to be a little bit more precise, yeah, it's about 2 a.m. London time. And now that I look at it, that's about, no, actually 1:30 a.m. around that time. So officially, if I want to put it precise, it is happening on March 19, 1:23 a.m. or so. So that's the new moon that's going to be on the 19th. And the new moon on the 19th is going to be blessed by a lot of conjunction, because we have Mercury, the North Node and Mercury coming together. So that's happening officially on March 18, right on the new moon. So we have, again, a cluster or stellium of Pisces, a lot of energy that has to do with imagination, flowing, getting information from above, acting in a psychic way, meaning that you're acting, doing something, and then realizing, okay, that was my intuition telling me to act, even overriding my thoughts. I didn't even was aware that that's what I'm doing. And at the same time of this new moon, we have Jupiter sending beautiful energies towards everyone in Pisces, because Jupiter is now in the middle of Cancer. So he kind of opens up a lot of path of positive energy throughout all of the planets that are activated by Pisces. The only thing is that, again, that Jupiter squaring Venus. Venus is in Aries, a fire sign. Jupiter is in Cancer, water sign. So, of course, they're a little bit in conflict. Again, relationship can be a little bit off. You're either trying too much or not trying enough. Maybe you're spreading yourself too thin between too many projects or too many ways of making money. But the idea is that you get really blessed energy on Wednesday. Even though Mercury is retrograde, we have this new moon happening on the 18th, 19th. We have the North Node pointing at Mercury, giving us a lot of thoughts and ideas about what we actually could do in order to succeed, in order to satisfy our soul's desires. There is no opposition in that day. And yes, the black moon is causing trouble to Mercury, to Mars. That's always a big issue. It just means bad mouthing or defaming or some gossip. So just avoid that, and then it will maybe avoid you. Then on March 19, we have the moon shifting into Aries, and still she's telling the same story, because from Tuesday until, let's say, Friday, this whole week is basically governed by the moon crossing into Pisces land, where we have the sun, and then moving into Aries, where we gonna have the sun this week moving into, but where we have Neptune, Saturn, Venus, and Chiron. So the moon is basically this week aggravating or activating or emphasizing that archetype of Pisces, I imagine, with Aries I am. So again, from Thursday, there's a little bit of a shift, more action, movement, more aggression, more getting things done. And especially on Friday, when the moon is be touching Venus, it's very good for relationship, partnerships, And that, of course, will also be the equinox. So what we have on Friday, March 20th, is the sun moving into Aries. We still have the same amount of planets in Aries and Pisces because the moon hasn't shifted. So again, 70% of the chart this whole week is about Pisces, Aries, an end in order to begin, closing something in order to open something new. And Mercury is going to be on Friday, March 20th, right on the equinox stationary. And again, anything that happens around the equinox is very important. We have Venus on top of a moon, great for relationships. So we're starting the year, the astrological year, first of all with Mercury stationary. So this year will be a little bit stuck intellectually, and connection to communication is not going to be the best because we're starting the astrological new year with Mercury fallen and stationary. That's not the easiest. But we're also starting it with Moon in Venus, a day after the new moon, which means a lot of relationships, a lot of new partnerships, a lot of falling in love, a lot of new ways of making money or new ways of connecting to your talents and your abilities. And at the same time, the moon being on top of Chiron means that we have a whole year where we might be revealing some old wounds or issues. And the moon is squaring Jupiter. It's a little bit too emotional. So it's going to be a very emotional year for most of us. That being said, that Mercury on top of the North Node is still going on because it's stationary. So it's interesting that we're going to have on Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the North Node sitting on top of Mercury. I don't think it's a coincidence that we have the North Node, which always carries the pointing of where our souls desire to learn or what our soul desire to learn. And having it on stationary Mercury conjunct, it means that Mercury wants to stay there a little bit longer. Because usually Mercury would just go one way or go the other way if it retrogrades. But if it's stationary, it happens only 12 days in a year. And that's the day he's conjunct the North Node. I think it's kind of a big deal because it tells us that there is something he wants us to download, and it takes longer to download that file. It has to be a file that to do with imagination, past lifetime, mysticism, spirituality, anything to do with your subconscious, because that's the source of information that Mercury taps into when he's in Pisces. And stationary just means, like I always say, be still and know that I'm God. There's something about meditation happening there. And it might be a message that demands action because the moon at that same time is in Aries. So again, March 20th, very interesting period. And then March 21st, Mercury is still stationary, so you still have to be a little bit careful. The sun is going to be conjuncting Neptune, very mystical day. It's a lot of information that downloads, like I said, a lot of psychic energy, a lot of intuition. And on March 22nd, we have the moon moving into Taurus. It's exalted. The sun is in Aries. It's exalted. Jupiter is in Cancer. It's exalted. So we have next week a lot of planets, at least in the beginning of the week, that are exalted, which is great. The only problem is we have Venus in exile, Saturn fallen, and Mercury fallen. So it's kind of like, great, we have a lot of exaltation, but we also have a lot of planets that are pushing that energy down. Well, there's always some kind of balance, even if it's not a balance we actually want. March 25, it's great to do a surgery. That's a great time to do it. It's a good thing it's not before. And it's great that it's after the equinox and during the time of Aries. Any questions from Instagram or questions in general? If there's anything, I added a new workshop on angels for April 25, how to connect to angels, tap into angels. It's going to be on my Instagram. Also, it's going to be here. I'm going to send it to you. But I think that overall, this week is going to be very, very interesting. I think that a lot of openings, especially because this week has so much interesting back and forth between fire and water, masculine and feminine, starting and ending. So definitely it is a week with a lot of action. So have a happy new moon and a happy new year and happy Mercury going direct.